Greetings of the day, everyone. I'm privileged to welcome you all into the first children's edition of Orange City Literature Festival organized by SGR Knowledge Foundation in association with GH Raisoni University, powered by Raisoni Group of Institutions. The motive behind the fest is to explore the ways that should help students develop emotional intelligence. Exposing children to quality literature can contribute to the creation of responsible, successful, and caring individuals. Stories have the power to promote emotional and moral development. The fest will enable them to develop into caring, intelligent, and friendly people. This session is also about stories that we read, hear, and discuss. The topic of our session is stories of princes, monsters, and magical creatures. And our speaker for the session is Miss Sutapa Basu. Let me introduce Sutapa, ma'am. But before that, I welcome you, ma'am. Sutapa
Thank you.
Basu Sutapa Basu is the author of Padmavati, The Queen Tells Her Own Story, published by Redomania in 2017, The Legend of Genghis Khan and the Curse of Nader Shah. She won the Author Award for the Best Fiction in 2019 by Times of India and JK Papers for her book, The Curse of Nader Shah. She has authored a psychological thriller, Dangle, published by Redomania in 2016, that was nominated for the Anupam Kher Award for the debut novels in 2017. She is she is the 2016 first prize winner of the Times of India in of the Times of India's Write India campaign. Her short stories have appeared in anthologies Crossed and Knotted, Defiant Dreams, When They Spoke, and Write India Stories. Her poems have appeared in Kafiana and The Dawn Beyond Waste. I once again welcome you, ma'am, in the children's edition of Orange City Literature Festival. Now, without further any ado, I hand over the session to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Maria.
You're welcome,
And
ma'am.
thank you so much, Orange City Literature Festival, for giving me this great and wonderful opportunity of meeting my young listeners. Because for you, my young listeners, I'm a friend. I'm Shutapa, your story friend. Tell me, do you like listening to stories? Because I do. And today, I'm going to tell you stories from a very special book. It's this book called Princesses, Monsters, and Magical Creatures. But this book has been translated from a very old book. It's a Bengali children's book, which is called Thakurmar Jhuli. And the stories in that book are 100 years old. Do you know how much time is 100 years? Well, let me try and explain. All of you have grandparents, don't you? Now think about the grandparents of your grandparents. What would they be to you? They would be your great great grandparents. Possibly when your great great grandparents were small children just like you, they read the stories in this Bengali book. Now, can you imagine how much time is 100 years? Okay, how did these stories come? There was a man, and his name was Dakshina Ranjan Mitro Mojumdar, whose mother and grandmother told him stories when he was a small child. When he grew up, he began to travel to the villages in his zamindari. And there, at night, in the light of the lantern, all the grandfathers and grandmothers of the village would come and tell him so many stories, so many fairy tales, so many folk tales, and they were so wonderful, so fantastic that he decided to write them down. And that is how he wrote this book in Bengali called Thakurmar Jhuli, meaning grandmother's bag of tales. Now, when this book was published in 1907, 3,000 copies of Thakurmar Jhuli were sold in 1 week. All the children in Bengal have heard the stories from this book. Let me tell you one story from the book. Are you ready? Okay. Once there was a king who had 2 queens. One was a very kind and beautiful queen who had a son called Lal Kamal. The other queen was a Rakhoshi, but nobody knew that, not even the king. Do you know why? Well, Rakhosh and Rakhoshi are monsters who love to eat human flesh and suck human blood. When they take one step, they have magical powers. If they take one step, it goes for kilometers. And they have long arms, which they can pull those arms as long as they want. And on those arms and feet, they have claws, just like tigers, to tear human flesh. And their teeth, they are long, pointed, and sharp. Rakhosh and Rakhoshis can also change their shapes whenever they want to. So, that Rakhoshi queen had changed herself to look like a normal human being. So, nobody knew that she was actually a monster. She also had a son. Her son was called Neel Kamal. Now, both these brothers, Lal Kamal and Neel Kamal, were great friends and they loved each other. But their friendship made the Rakhoshi queen very angry because she was pretending to be a human being. So she could not eat human flesh, right? And that was making her so irritated because she wanted to eat the tender flesh of small little boy Lal Kamal. But she could not do it because he was always with his mother or he was always with his brother Neel Kamal. Okay. So what did the Rakhoshi do? She planned to first kill his mother, that is the beautiful, good human queen. So every night, what she would do is she would go to the queen's bedroom, and standing in the bedroom when the queen was sleeping, she would take out her tongue and she made it into a long tube which she would poke into the queen's body and suck out all her blood. You know, something like the straw that we use to suck juice from the bottle. So her tongue was like a straw and she would suck the blood every night from the good queen's body. After some time, the queen became sick and then she finally died. Now the Rakhoshi queen was very happy. She will be able to eat Lal Kamal. But no, Neel Kamal was always with Lal Kamal. He would always protect his brother. So the Rakhoshi queen could only get angry, only scold the little boy. Even then, Neel Kamal would run and protect his brother. But the Rakhoshi queen could not wait anymore. So one day, she called her brother to the palace. Now, what happened? The king was sleeping in his bedroom, and his bedroom was just opposite the bedroom where the 2 princes were sleeping. Suddenly in the night, he heard screams and he heard horrible sounds. So he picked up his sword and he ran to the bedroom of his sons. And what did he see? Neel Kamal was sleeping in his bed, fast asleep. But Lal Kamal, a huge Rakhosh was holding Lal Kamal. And the poor little boy was screaming and shouting. The king picked up his sword and he went towards the Rakhosh. But what happened? The Rakhoshi queen came right that moment into the bedroom. She took 2 hairs from her head and threw them at the king. When the hairs touched the king turned into a stone statue. He could not move. He could not kill the Rakhosh with his sword. And the poor king, as he watched the Rakhosh nicely eating away Lal Kamal. He was crying, tears were falling down his cheek. He could not even wipe them because he could not move his hands. He was a stone statue. So meanwhile, the Rakhoshi queen, she was very happy and she started laughing. Her laugh woke up Nilkamal. What did he see? He saw that his brother Lal Kamal was being eaten by this Rakhosh. Quickly he jumped out of bed and he went to the Rakhosh and he hit him on the head with a fist. The Rakhosh started screaming, Nilkamal did not stop. He hit him again. After all, he was also a Rakhosh. He had a lot of strength. So he hit him again. And from his mouth, the Rakhosh vomited an iron ball. Inside that iron ball was Lal Kamal. And the Rakhosh ran away as fast as he could. Now the Rakhoshi queen was very angry. She had planned everything, but now her own son had spoiled it all. She was so angry that she forgot that he was her son. She became the Rakhoshi and catching hold of Nilkamal, she ate him up. Imagine, she ate her own son up. But then Nilkamal was also a Rakhosh's son, isn't it? She could not keep him in her stomach. And she also vomited. And when she vomited, an iron ball came out. So there was a golden ball and there was an iron ball. Now, the Rakhoshi queen was very scared that somehow her son Nilkamal will come out of the iron ball and again he will not let anybody touch Lal Kamal. So what did she do? With her magic powers, she created a fog in the kingdom. And hidden in that fog, she went into a bamboo forest and she dug a hole, deep hole. And she put both the balls in the hole and covered it up. And she came back to the palace. Now, what do you think happened? Do you think that Nilkamal would be able to get out of the iron ball and help Lal Kamal also escape? Will the brothers be able to kill the Rakhoshi queen? Will they be able to save the king? Well, you have to read the story Lal Kamal Nilkamal in this book to find out. In the meanwhile, I'll show you a picture, of the Rakhosh eating Lal Kamal. Can you see? This is the picture of the Rakhosh. Can you see how terrible the Rakhosh is? And right at the end, can you see the Rakhoshi queen? She's standing over there. And she's going to paralyze the king. The king is already standing in one corner. He's paralyzed. He's like a stone statue. Can you see him standing there in one corner? So this is the story of Lal Kamal and Nilkamal. Now, let me tell you something more about this book. When there was already a book called Thakurmar Jhuli, why do you think I decided to write princesses, monsters, and magical creatures? Now, when I was a little girl, just like you, my grandmother told me the stories from Thakurmar Jhuli. And they were such fantastic stories. Even when I grew up, I would remember the people in the stories. There was Lal Kamal, Nilkamal. There were the princes and princesses. There were flying horses. There were talking parrots. And there were cunning foxes and silly crocodiles. But I would remember all these people from the books. And when I grew up, I wanted that all the children of the world also read these stories and also enjoy the magic of these stories. But the stories were written in Bengali. Tell me, do you know how to read Bengali? You don't. And so did so many other children in the world. They didn't know how to read Bengali. So I thought, why not write these stories in English so that everybody, all the children will be able to read these stories. Now, if you take a look at the book, see, can you see the front cover? This is the front cover. And this is the back cover. Can you see the back cover? Can you see the animals on the back cover? And can you see the front cover? You must tell me later on which picture on these covers was your favorite picture. Okay, you will write. And now these stories in this book are divided into 3 sections. First part is called Churning Milky Oceans, because that contains the adventures of brave princes and even braver princesses. The second part is called The Land of Monsters, where Rakhosh and Kokosh, another kind of monster, live. And the third part is about the strange creatures who are funny, who are bold, who are cunning, and adventurous too. Let me tell you another story from the same book. This is the story of the Needle King. Okay, let's listen to it. Once there was a prince and a shepherd boy who were great friends. They spent all their time playing together. And the prince always told his friend, when I become the king, you are going to be my chief minister. Now, slowly the boys grew up. And the prince became the king. He sat on his throne. And he became so busy in his work that he had no time to spend with his friend, the shepherd. After a few years, the king got married to a beautiful princess. But the princess was also a very proud girl. And living with her, the king also changed. He became very, very proud, and he thought he was better and much higher than all the others in his kingdom, simply because he was a king. One day, the shepherd came to the palace and he called out, "How are you, my friend?" The palace guards did not let him come in. So standing outside, he kept calling his friend and he said, "My friend, come, meet me. I'm standing right outside your palace. I heard that you have got married. Won't you show me your beautiful queen?" Now the king had heard the shepherd's voice. He heard his friend calling, but he refused to come out because he was very ashamed. He didn't want anybody to know that this poor shepherd was his friend. He told the guards, "I don't want to meet him." So what did the guards do? They beat the shepherd black and blue and they threw him outside the kingdom. The poor shepherd, he went away sadly. Nobody knows where. The next day, the king would not come out of his bedroom. When the queen came into the bedroom, she saw a strange sight. The king was sitting on his bed and his entire body was covered with needles which had been poking into his skin all over. Even on his head, there were quivering needles on his head. His eyes were shut because the needles had pinned them, and his mouth was closed because the needles had sewn up his lips. The poor king, he was groaning and moaning. He was in so much pain. The queen called everybody in the palace. She called all the doctors, but nobody could save him. And everybody wondered, how did this thing happen to the king suddenly? Only one person knew how it had happened. Do you know who that was? The king himself. He knew why these needles had suddenly come all over his body, because he had ignored his friend, because he was ashamed of his friend. Now he was ashamed of himself for being so cruel, so rude, and so impolite. But he could not tell this to anybody. So he sat in his room, in a dark bedroom, groaning and moaning. He could not eat, he could not drink, he could not do anything. The poor queen had to run the kingdom. Now, one day, the queen, she went to the river to have a bath. On the banks of the river, she saw a beautiful woman standing. That girl came to her and said, "Dear Queen, do you want a maid? Do you want to buy a maid?" The queen said, "Well, I can have a maid if you can take care of my needle king." And that girl said, "Yes, I'll do that." So the queen took off her golden bangle, which is called kankon, and gave it to the girl and bought the girl as a maid for her palace, for the king. The maid told the queen, "Let me give you a proper bath." So she took off the queen's jewelry, her earrings, her necklace, her ornament on the head, her bangles from her hips, from her feet. She took off all the gold ornaments and she put them on the bank. And then she took off her beautiful silk sari. She oiled her hands and legs and body, shampooed her hair, and then she said, "Go into the river and have a bath, dear queen." So the queen went into the river and she started having a bath in the water. Do you know what happened then? That maid, she quickly wore all the ornaments, all the bangles, the earrings, the hair ornament, the hips also, the necklaces. She wore them all and she wore the silk sari. And then she stood on the river bank and this is what she said. "Oh girl, turn your head and see how glowing is the bride's beauty. Kakunmala is now your queen. How long in the water shall you preen?" The queen, she took all the water out of her face and her eyes. She said, "What am I seeing? Oh my God, that maid is wearing my clothes and my jewels." What had happened? The maid had become the queen and the real queen had become a maid. Why do you think that happened? Do you have an answer to that? The king knew why the needles were poking him. Can you tell me why the queen lost all her jewelry, all her sari, and even her position as a queen? Why do you think that happened? I'll leave it for you to think. And if you want to know more of what happened next in the story, again, go back to this book and read the story of the Needle King. I'll show you a picture. So look at this Needle King. He's sitting in his bedroom. Can you see all the needles poking out of his body? Poor king. He was groaning and moaning, but he could not do anything to help himself. Right? So these are the stories in this book. Right? I hope you liked the stories that I told them because there are more of these stories in the book. I'm so excited to bring this beautiful book to all of you because I had a dream that all the children in the world should be able to read and enjoy these fantastic stories. And now with this book, my dream has come true. Read the book, take a trip into fantasy world and become friends with kings, queens, princes and princesses and fantastic animals like the flying horse, like the talking parrot and the cunning fox. You can find this book on Amazon or in any bookstore near your house. And do tell me which story you like the best. Don't forget to do that. If you want to tell me, you want to send me a message, you can do it on my website, www.shutapabasu.com. And there are many, many stories on that website which you can read for free. So do come to my website. Tell me what you liked about princesses, monsters, and magical creatures. And till then, take care. Lots of love from Sutapa, your story friend. And now, let me hand it back to our anchor, Maria.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was just awesome being part of this session. It will be a great pleasure to read your book. Our audience can please get their book from the link provided in a description or visit crossword stores in their city. This session was supported by Readomania publication. You can get your copy from Readomania website as well. A must-read book for the generation today. Wish you happy reading, friends. I once again thank you, Sutapa ma'am, and the audience in front of the systems. Get ready for the quiz based on this session and visit www.oclfnagpur.com to participate in a quiz and win exciting gifts and prizes. A gigantic Orange City Literature Festival will be back in November 2022 in Nagpur, the city of oranges. Get ready for the physical fest in the coming winter, attending awesome and interacting with your friends, with your favorite authors. Keep following us for the updates of the Festival of Words. Thank you.